What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the MLB Swing for the Fences show here in the Run Pure Sports YouTube channel, talking Thursday night's 5-game MLB slate, another little bit of a shorter slate. We went from a 2-man booth to a 1-man booth to a 3-man booth in the span of the last 2 minutes or so. But we do have, at least for now, AP and Third and Schlong here joining me to talk some ball. AP, we'll throw it to you. How are you doing on this Thursday afternoon?
Yeah, doing well. I wanted to come on just because, yesterday I got my ass absolutely kicked and I got to redeem myself. So I got the playbook up, had a little extra time, and want to come on here with my guy DC and Third and Schlong. So, yeah, it's a small slate too, and there's a lot of weather, so I think it's going to be a good one.
It is a Royals slate, so, good to see AP in the house for a Royals slate. The Royals having a nice season, so good to see there. Bryce, assume you're deep in those Olympic streets maybe this afternoon, but how are you doing on this Thursday afternoon?
Yeah, we've been absolutely crushing the tennis and soccer bets in Olympics, but trying to put those out there for the people. There's no soccer today, so we turned to tennis. TT Pass was kind of disappointing, but, that's what you get with him. So it's what it is. Move on to baseball, and we got our first football slate of the season tonight.
Yes, preseason football tonight. We're not going to see many players that you're drafting in your season-long fantasy teams on the field tonight, but still, I think all of us are excited to get at least some NFL football back on the field. I know all three of us very, very excited for the start of the real NFL, which coming pretty quick here. I think once we hit August, obviously today, August 1st, it feels like it's right around the corner with training camp going on, preseason games starting up. Chiefs going to defend their Super Bowl title. I know you're on board with that, AP. Be a good season.
I am, but first we got to talk about best ball because our guy Big T, I would throw myself in that camp too, kind of not a best ball guy or whatever, but we've come full circle. And I was watching that draft last night. You hopped in there. I think it was Big T, JSU were both in there. My guy DC hops in, and I liked your squad on that build. That's all I'll say.
Yeah,
it was pretty nice.
We've all been on kind of the team, team DFS over team best ball over the years, but best ball has grown to the point now where, there's massive prize pools. If you know what you're doing, if you're doing your research early on, there's certainly a big edge, and obviously you don't have to manage the team. So you can do a number of teams. I think I'm up to close to 100 drafts at this point. I've got slow drafts going on. I'm firing a little bit of high-stakes stuff, and, I love the best ball streets. Yeah, go ahead.
One thing that stuck out, I'm watching this draft, and, had popped the gummy, so starting to feel good. And, what else was on? Like Olympics or something, and I was dialing in my PGA stuff. But, Bryce, so one of the guys, I think he was drafting out of, the 11 or 12th hole. Did you see this, DC? Starts out 4 running backs? I've never seen that. I'm not a huge, best ball guy or whatever like
Certainly
that.
unorthodox. I'm not the biggest best ball player of all time. I think it's even if you're not like me, I think it's a great way to warm up for the season. At least I like to do at least 20 to 50 before the season starts, just to kind of get acquainted with all the player movement and stuff like that. And obviously preseason helps with it as well. But I'm more of a receiver guy first, unless it's McCaffrey.
I've only done best balls on DraftKings and Underdog so far. They do obviously have a different scoring system with the full PPR on DraftKings, half on Underdog, and then DraftKings has the same scoring as their normal DFS product. So they've got the 100-yard bonuses. Their Underdog does not, and it really, really, in my opinion, makes wide receiver early and often the ideal strategy. So actually, AP, the guy that drafted 4 running backs in a row, was right next to me. So I enjoyed it because I got all the wide receivers I wanted. I think I got 6 in the first 7 rounds, something like that, which I do really feel strongly is the way to go in most DraftKings best ball drafts. So I felt good about my draft. Didn't quite get the quarterbacks with my receivers that I wanted, but it did feel pretty good about it in the end. I didn't even know that thing was happening. I just saw it pop up on my Twitter feed, JSU, Big T jumping in a 5-5-5. I was like, why not? I'll get in here and draft the guys. So that's the highest stakes I've done so far. I don't know if I'll go much higher than that in the best ball streets. But yes, as Chris Myers says, it is baseball, not football. You're here for the baseball winners. We get it.
I mean, Myers, come on, Myers. Like, we got time. It's a small slate. We got time.
5-game slate. I mean, even with us three rambling people talking.
I think I've only completed 4 drafts. I fell asleep during 2 of them, I think. And there's the Millie Maker drafts. Always happens every year. Just using the tickets they hand out. I think I'm 100% Mahomes exposure though, so we're sitting good. We're right on par for where I need to be. Yep, right on brand. There we go.
Got plenty of Mahomes myself as well, and that's not going to change anytime soon unless we get injuries or whatever could pop up. But for now, I'm with you, AP. I think it's going to be a good season for the Chiefs. So surprised for the people to hear that coming from 2 of the biggest Chiefs homers around. With that, though, we will jump into the baseball streets here. Again, it's a 5-game slate, so a shorter slate. We do have potential weather in a couple of the games as well. And really, just being honest, it's not the best baseball slate in the world. But nevertheless, big prize pools everywhere. Somebody's got to win. We will do our best to win ourselves or to get some of you guys to the winner's circle. There are 2 games that start at the 6:40 Eastern time. Obviously 25 minutes earlier than we typically see the baseball lock. So they are included on the slate today. Not always the case, but with the shorter slate, DraftKings did include both those games. First one we'll talk about is Baltimore and Cleveland. We've got Trevor Rogers going for Baltimore. Kind of an interesting spot here. The Orioles used one of their bigger trade acquisitions. Kind of a surprising one. They traded 2 pretty solid prospects to acquire Trevor Rogers, who, people that have been watching the show playing DFS all year, we don't, have a particularly high opinion of Trevor Rogers. So it was interesting that the Orioles clearly kind of went out and targeted this guy. I would have thought that they could get a better pitcher than Trevor Rogers for the prospects that they gave up. But it is possible that the Orioles, who are a smart organization in general, see something in Rogers. I don't see it, but they might see something. He does get a pretty tough matchup though here to kick off his Orioles career against the Guardians team that has some power, doesn't strike out much, just a good team in general. So I don't really expect Rogers to find success here in his first start, but we shall see. And then Ben Lively going for the Guardians. I really haven't played Lively much all year. He's performed pretty well. I'm still kind of not believing it. And I kind of like, honestly, both offenses in this game. Total sitting at 9. Pretty much a pick 'em in the betting market. We'll start with UAP. What are you doing with the Orioles and the Guardians here?
Yeah, the Rogers pickup, kind of interesting. I mean, I guess we'll see what they do with him. And, I mean, this matchup tonight is going to be tough. And I saw our boy Stevers in chat. I like what the Guardians have done, picking up Lane Thomas. Yeah. Really nice addition for them in the 2-hole. And I really like, so like, it's interesting. I like the Guardians here, but I respect the Orioles bullpen. And once we get to that part of the game, I mean, it's going to be tough for them to do a lot of damage. So like I found myself using the Guardians as kind of power mini stacks with Lane Thomas and Jose Ramirez. And I do like my boy Noel. Dude is just an absolute beast. 3.3K for a nice value. So that's kind of what I see myself doing with the Guardians. Not going to play Rogers and not going to play Lively either. We have some better, I mean, weather pending, we have some much better options in my opinion. I hate attacking the Orioles. I respect this offense a lot. I want to assume that you guys are going to be in the same boat for me. And the Guardians too. The thing that's tough about them in regards to like full stacking either side here is both teams have good bullpens. So it's going to be difficult to get run production, post these starters. So that's my one concern with like going full stacks with the Orioles and full stacks with the Guardians.
Yeah, I'm not interested in either of these starting pitchers for DFS purposes. AP brings up good points about the bullpens. Both of these teams have good bullpens. For that reason, I think I would avoid a full game stack here because you don't really want a close game if you're going to either of these offenses. You want one of these teams to get out to a big lead and not have to face the good arms out of the bullpen that the other team has, right? So if you're playing, like I wouldn't play 4 Orioles and 4 Guardians. I would much rather play, either 5 Orioles and no Guardians at all, or vice versa, 5 Guardians and no Orioles. I do like both offenses, but I don't really want to play them together. That's not always the case, but I think this is a little bit of a unique circumstance where you really do want this game to turn out lopsided in one way or the other, which it very well could. I could see these teams going off early, knocking these pitchers out and getting into, some of the not so good arms out of the pen. Bryce, saw you nodding your head. Sounds like you might agree with that strategy in general tonight.
Yeah, I don't really have interest in either of these pitchers. As you guys touched on, 2 good offenses, low strikeout. We haven't picked on either of these offenses all year, and it's been pretty successful so far. So I'm with you there. That said, it is a 5-game slate, and pending weather in the Cubs game, like right now, I ran my 150 right before I got on the show. I ended up with about 5% of each pitcher. Like I'm not like eliminating them from my 150 pool, but like if I was making a 20 max pool or certainly a 3 max, they would definitely get eliminated. But that number might get bumped up a little bit simply due to scarcity at the position. If I do decide to axe pitchers in Chicago, that'll be a discussion for that game. But yeah, I 100% agree on your take where I don't love the game stack as much as like opposed to like a mini stack or like stacking one side of it, just because like if you get into the back end of the bullpens, I mean, it's not any like worse than or any better than other teams, but like if you get the good arms, it's significantly tougher. I would prefer the Orioles side of the game simply because I think they'll be lower owned. You get some cheap bats in this Indians lineup or Guardians lineup that kind of pop a bit. They're just a little more affordable. Like you get Noel 3.2K. Lane Thomas is only 5K. Jose Ramirez at 6, as opposed to like Rutschman, Henderson, like Santander are significantly more expensive than that. I mean, I know you get Kausman in leadoff spot, but I'm not eliminating 5-mans. I don't necessarily think I'm going to be over on either offense by any means. I'll probably be feel or under on both offenses and both pitchers. I think there are better games to attack. Now, if the Chicago game gets pulled, that obviously changes the calculus of things a bit. But as of now, I think it's going to play. But that's a discussion that we can have in Discord closer to game time.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We did see the return of Jackson Holliday recently, top prospect for the Orioles. There was some speculation he could be potentially moved at the trade deadline. They did hold on to him, hit a grand slam the other day. He's 3K in the 9-hole, and both of these lineups are deep enough where I think if you want to, you could go to the back half of these lineups for some cheaper bats. We don't love, game stacking, but I do like both offenses in general. And frankly, most of the players on both offenses, in my opinion, are reasonable or good plays. So, yeah, I am in on both these offenses, just not going to play them on the same lineup together. Brings us to Kansas City and Detroit. We've got Seth Lugo going for the Royals, coming off a little bit of a rough outing against the Cubs, was dominant in the outing before that against the White Sox. And then Cater Montero going for Detroit. Hasn't been great. Isn't, I don't think, a very good pitcher. He did have a couple decent starts when he was kind of first called up, but he seems very pedestrian. To me, a pitcher worth targeting against so far, at least. We've seen right-handers, same-handed hitters perform even better against Montero than the opposite-handed hitters. So the Royals, AP's Royals, I do think could be waving their Royals flag today against Montero in a pretty bad Tigers bullpen behind him. And then Lugo, pretty good matchup for him, honestly, against this Tigers team that obviously didn't add anything at the deadline. And I think has one of their worst lineups of the year out there. No Riley Green in this one. There just isn't much of a threat, especially if you're we're talking about Matt Vierling and Colt Keith as the two main threats in this lineup. So not a lot to fear for Seth Lugo. I do think 9,400, it does seem like a high price to pay for Lugo, but he has been good all year. It is a short slate, and he does get, in my opinion, a very strong matchup here against the Tigers. So I'm all over the Royals side of this game. I like their offense. I like Seth Lugo, and I don't really have a ton of interest in the Tigers side of it. AP, over to you for Royals and Tigers.
Yeah, I was worried there for a second that we're going to have to issue like an apology statement from Schlong's Twitter account for dropping the Indian slur, but he caught himself. So we're obviously joking. My Royals. So I got cute. They were mega chalk yesterday, and when you look at their splits, home road, they've been so good in Kauffman Stadium. They've been so bad on the road. The matchup was just so good, and they're chalk, rightfully so. I faded them, though, and I got absolutely pounded. They put up 10 runs. This lineup, this lineup is a lot better now. Miguel Garcia hitting the ball a lot better. He's having a terrible season. He's been terrible, horrendous this season. He's finally starting to find his swing. They moved him back up to leadoff, which I love tonight. And the lineup, it's starting to look a little bit more complete. Montero is a guy, I believe he leans on a four-seam and slider, and he's gotten absolutely pounded. 6 home runs given up the last 3 starts, I believe. Hasn't missed a lot of bats, so Kansas City should absolutely tee off on him. So I'm on board with the KC 5-man stacks. I got to say one thing. Michael Massey, when I looked up specific pitch type results on the season, Michael Massey's been the best slider hitter, and that's a pitch that Montero goes to quite often. And they moved Massey to the 6th spot. I don't think anyone's going to play him. He was leading off. He was very, very popular. He's kind of been struggling a little bit. In tournaments, don't ignore him. Get a little bit of Michael Massey. I kind of like him in this spot. Anytime you get moved, I don't know. I think you kind of step up and put that pressure on yourself. So I kind of like those spots and taking a shot on him. So get different with your Royal stacks if you do go with Kansas City, because they're going to be heavily owned, especially the top 4 bats on their side. Love Seth Lugo here. I mean, he absolutely delivered a gem against the Tigers earlier in the season. I know that was a long time ago. I think the only argument, DC, I think you would agree with this. The only argument against him is Lugo's never going to overpower a team. So you're really relying on him limiting damage, which he's done all season long, and then generating a few strikeouts, which he should be able to do against this Tigers team. But if they do put up some runs, and if the strikeouts aren't there, that would be the path to him busting, which we have seen more of recently. But looking at this lineup, I can't see how he doesn't get it done. So Lugo is definitely going to be an option that I'm considering tonight.
Yeah, Lugo got the highest upside pitcher in general. And, I'm not expecting 8, 9, 10 strikeouts out of him. But on a 5-game slate, you don't necessarily need that to be the SP1 or the SP2 overall. So I'm more likely to play a high-priced, somewhat lower upside pitcher like Lugo on a shorter slate like we have tonight. Over to you, Bryce. What do you see between the Royals and the Tigers here?
What, Dylan Dingler, if that's how you say his name, doesn't worry you?
It sounds like a creative player on MLB The Show or something.
Hey, what if his name is Dinger though? That makes a huge difference.
Exactly, Dinger.
They were playing him, right? I mean, that's how it goes.
I'm gonna have to put him in a couple teams in my 150. I mean, just for the namesake, but I like Lugo here in all seriousness. I think pitching is going to be a little bit hard to play in Chicago for some people. So if those guys get crossed off the board for a lot, I think we see a Morton Lugo, double chalk, mega pairing, because without Gray and Imanaga, I mean, the slate's pitching is pretty ugly outside of those 4. So, I ran with those guys. If I take them out, I'm ending up with absolutely tons of Lugo. So I think he's certainly going to be chalk tonight. So, I mean, I know he's not the best guy to stack against, but on a 5-game slate, especially if it turns into a 4-game slate, I wouldn't hate getting some leverage on the Tigers bats here. I definitely prefer to do it in minis with like Vierling, Keith, Perez, and maybe a Dylan Dinger. But it's hard to eat that much Seth Lugo chalk. If I was playing 5 teams and assuming Chicago's out, I would have Lugo on 3 and probably a Tigers mini on at least one of the 2 that didn't have him. I just think it's a super good leverage spot, and we'll get to Morton in a second as well. But now, if the Chicago game gets included, that actually brings my interest in Lugo up more, just because he won't be quite as chalky, and you won't have as much leverage on him to play a Detroit stack. So it's kind of dependent on that for me. In terms of Royals bats, they're going to come in around 20% of my ownership tonight. I like them a good amount. AP made a really good point about Massey and Garcia. People aren't going to play Massey in the 6th hole. I love playing overpriced guys at the bottom of the lineups and tournaments. Especially guys who've got moved down. I think it's kind of interesting that MJ Melendez is getting a day off here. He's been absolutely cheeks since he got off the IL. So I guess he's just getting a day off for Hampson. But Hampson starting against a righty, you'd see Isbell get pinch hit before him. He's normally a guy that pinch hits for Isbell. So I think it's good for both of them in bottom of the order wraparound KC stacks. Just a note on, the kind of roster construction that'll get you different playing Kansas City.
Yeah, it makes sense. And, making fun of his name a little bit or liking his name, Dylan Dingler. He was hitting very well at AAA before this call-up. Hitting 308, the 559 slugging, 17 home runs in 71 games at AAA, 37% above league average down there. Was a 38th overall pick back in 2020. So 2,400 for Mr. Dylan Dinger, we'll call him. Could be a pretty good play if you're not on Seth Lugo tonight, if you're trying to get some leverage against one of the chalkier pitchers. Just had to look up the minor league stats. Not saying he'll do well tonight, but he does at least have a little bit potential at what is pretty clearly the worst position at catcher. Brings us to Miami and Atlanta. This one in Atlanta, we've got Charlie Morton, going to be, I believe, one of the more popular pitchers tonight. Could be the most popular pitcher. Obviously gets a matchup at home here against a Miami team that traded away 2 of their better hitters in Jazz Chisholm and Josh Bell. Was a pretty bad lineup, frankly, already. And, of course, got significantly worse with those 2 trades. So a good spot for Morton here. He's a big favorite, sitting around minus 205, 8.5 total. Will be hot and humid in Atlanta, but nothing out of the ordinary in terms of weather for this time of year for the Atlanta Braves. So Morton's been, we kind of know what he is at this point. Coming off a bad start against the Mets, had been pretty good for the most part prior to that. He is a guy who has a significant amount of upside on a slate-to-slate basis, but a difficult guy for me to trust when he's chalky, when he's popular, even in this good of a matchup. Just the way he pitches, he walks a lot of guys, so sometimes just completely lose command of the strike zone. I swear he walks more 9 hitting catchers than any pitcher, or at least it seems like it, watching him pitch. So I do like him tonight. I don't think he's entirely safe. It sounded like, Bryce, maybe you have some interest in a leverage Miami stack. I think that's interesting against a guy like Morton. And in the Braves, I think are going to get some ownership. They do have the highest team total on the slate, sitting right around 5 runs. Of course, they've been disappointing all season, but they are at least projected to score the most runs tonight against Miami rookie Max Meyer, prospect of some note. Has pitched pretty well in the 4 opportunities he's been given, including against Atlanta. Now, that was back on April 13th. I don't know how much stock we can put into that, but he is a pitcher with good stuff, a decent strikeout pitcher. They have let him work, fairly deep into the pitch count through 85 pitches last time out. did get up to 91 in that start against Atlanta back in April. So I think you can put him around 90 pitches. There are strikeouts to be had, certainly, against this Braves team. So I think you can make the case for either of these pitchers. And honestly, of course, the Braves are in play. They've got the highest team total. But I don't mind that Marlins leverage stack either against Morton. So, this is often the case more on shorter slates like this one where you can kind of play both sides of this game, both offenses, both pitchers. I think are reasonable plays. Interested to hear where you guys stand on Atlanta and Miami. AP, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so, initially kind of on the surface now, two completely different pitchers, obviously, but the spot kind of reminded me a little bit of Logan Webb last night. Webb entered that matchup. I thought he was going to be under-owned relative to what he should have been on that slate. I think he came in around 30%. I thought he should have been a little bit higher on that pitching slate, but he absolutely smashed. And he came into that matchup against the A's having a few obviously rough matchups over the last, over his last 5 starts, but really struggling. So I kind of see that with Morton. Like, in my opinion, it's like if Charlie Morton can't get it done against this Marlins lineup, man, it's going to be tough going for him. So I am on the side that I do think he gets it done. I think the strikeouts will be there. Pretty weak lineup here from the Marlins. I definitely get the idea, and in multi-entry formats, like having some stacks against him, just with his walk issues and command issues, like you mentioned. But man, I think the mojo is starting to get in the right direction with the additions of Jorge Soler. Back with the Braves. Witt, Merrifield, he's been hitting better too there in the night. So this Braves team is looking a little bit better. I actually like them as a 5-man stack tonight against Max Meyer and the Marlins bullpen. Love the power bats. I think, if they can get it going, you got Soler leading off. I mean, this is a 5-man stack. Take all the power bats. Maybe leave Olsen on the bench just because he's been struggling. Did have a nice day yesterday. Maybe he's back also. But there's a lot that you can do with this Braves lineup now. So I'm very overweight on Braves 5-man stacks tonight against Max Meyer. I'm not high on the Marlins at all against Charlie Morton. I'm going to be playing a lot of Charlie Morton.
Interesting to me that they've got Kelenic down in the 8-hole against a righty with Soler leading off. I mean, maybe Kelenic has really struggled over the last week or so when I was kind of had a little baseball break, but that's curious to me.
He's been hitting there even against righties. So, weird. Yeah, just kind of a lineup change they've made, trying to switch things around. New blood with Soler.
Yeah.
He doesn't really profile as a leadoff hitter, but, it definitely adds some pop to their team, which they need.
The Braves manager kind of old school. I'm sure he kind of just more vibes based on the lineup, right? Well, we'll try Soler in the leadoff spot.
We got it. They finally gave me a new bat. Let's put him in the leadoff spot because it's been absolutely atrocious for us all year.
Yeah, exactly. So, something like that. Bryce, what are your thoughts here on this one?
This game to me is super similar to the previous game. Like Lugo and Morton are super similar to me. I think Morton has more upside than Lugo. I also think he has more downside. So like if I'm playing 5 teams, I wouldn't hate a Marlins mini in one of them that I'm not using Morton on. I do like Morton a little bit more than Lugo here. I think it's worse hitting weather, but it's also a way worse Marlins team. And that's kind of funny when you compare it to the Tigers team. I see 3 professional bats at most in this Marlins team. A lot of these guys wouldn't start on any other major league team. So
right.
I mean, if Morton doesn't get it done tonight, he's likely not going to get it done. I'm likely going to be around, if I was playing 5 teams, honestly, I'd probably play him in 4 teams and have a Marlins 3-man on the other. So that's how I'm approaching it. Favorite specific bats that stand out to me here. I would definitely include Jesus Sanchez in this simply because I do think he's one of their few players that can actually hit a baseball. It would probably just be the top 3. Edwards, Berger, and him. I don't think you need to get to like the bottom of the order guys. Like you're already going to be like super different if you play them, period. So I don't think you need to get into the worst plays to get different here. On the Atlanta side of the ball, I like them a little bit more than KC tonight personally. It's really good hitting weather. I know Max Meyer is a decent talent, but you're looking to get to a bad bullpen. Look no further than the Marlins on this slate. So this game or the Braves are my top overall stack in the night. I lost money on them all season. Hopefully, the All-Star break or at the trade deadline help turn it around a bit. But back on the Braves train tonight. Hopefully, I don't get proven wrong, but I think Soler is a really good addition to this lineup. So I'll be playing, 1 through 9. I don't think they're going to come in mega chalk. I personally think KC will be higher, but we'll see.
Either of you have interest in Max Meyer? I mean, we know. Yeah,
I'm not excluding him in my 150 by any means. It's a 5-game slate, and especially if we get the next game taken off the slate, I mean, I'll probably end up with 10 to 15% Meyer because while I do like the Braves a lot, I mean, Meyer does have a lot of upside for 7.5. So it's who are you going to pair with Lugo or Morton? It's just, you can't just, I'm not playing 150 Lugo Morton combos. So yeah, I do have an interest in Meyer. I like him more than both of Rogers and Lively and Feltner and Fulmer. So, while I like the Braves, I'm probably going to be over on Meyer too. He does have a lot of strikeout upside in this matchup.
Yeah, Sabres ownership is, of course, with the Cubs St. Louis game playing, which we'll talk about that next. Some risk there, but they do have Meyer right now. Go ahead.
One thing just to add on Meyer too. I agree with you guys. I looked at him hard. Maybe I have a ton of vision with the new look Braves, but he has a nasty slider with a ton of movement. And if his placement's good, he could definitely get it done against the Braves. He only threw it 30% of the time. It's always been his most dominant pitch. So the usage was way down in his last start. So if he leads with the 4-seam, I don't know. That's where I think the Braves will have success. But multi-entry formats, I think you play him. The upside's definitely there. Look, the Braves could just revert back to what they've been all season. That wouldn't surprise any of us, I don't think.
I sometimes think some of these pitchers who have just awful bullpens behind them go a little bit under-owned because people see the team total for the Braves. But, that's the bullpen is baked in there. That's, oftentimes close to half the game, 3 or 4 innings at least, out of the bullpen. And so I actually think Meyer's got a chance here. I do kind of like him. Sabres got him below 5% right now. That'll definitely go up if St. Louis and Chicago Cubs game isn't an option. But I still do like the ownership number. They've got him significantly lower than both Fulmer and Feltner. We'll get to that with the last game of the night. But I think that's interesting. You also get, I think, some pretty good leverage. Maybe the Braves aren't the most popular stack, but they've got to be in the top 2 or 3 at the very minimum. So I do have some interest in Max Meyer, obviously like Morton. And I do think you can play both offenses here as well. That does bring us to St. Louis and Chicago. This game is the one with potential weather issues. Currently, just looking at the radar, it doesn't look bad at all. There's no rain in Chicago right now. It is hot and humid, and obviously that's weather conditions where we could see storms pop up. But I do think, talking 2.5 hours before this game is scheduled to start, my guess now would be that this game plays probably without issue. And if there is an issue, I would guess it would be a delay that they eventually would be able to play. Now, whether or not these two pitchers who are going to be or would be popular options, Sonny Gray, Shota Imanaga, would come back after a delay, you just never know. It depends on how long, how deep into the game they've already gone, how things are going, all of that stuff. So this one's going to be a decision point, I think, for a lot of people. Only one game after this one. I do think the last game, it does have 2 pitchers that you could pivot to if you felt like you needed to, even leaving salary on the table if necessary. But I do think decent matchups for both of Gray and Imanaga if they are, cleared to play. If this game looks like it's going to be safe for pitching, I like Gray personally better than Imanaga. It's basically a toss-up in the betting market, 7.5 total. I just like the Cardinals lineup a little bit better right now. I also think Gray is slightly the better pitcher of the two. So I'm more on the Gray side. I don't think Imanaga is a bad play. And then bats-wise, for me, it would be more the power from the Cardinals side that would be the most intriguing plays. Probably wouldn't go for a full stack, but I don't mind some one-offs from the right-handed power with the Cardinals, especially if the wind direction holds, blowing out to left center field at the moment. AP, I'll throw it to you. Kind of a lot going on with this one, but talk to us, St. Louis and the Chicago Cubs.
Yeah, so this is going to be really important to monitor if they can start on time. The one thing, too, about this storm system, I think it's the same system that probably hit me yesterday night, which was insane, but temperatures just completely dropped once the system was through. Yeah. And it looks to be the same situation. Like you see, they could be playing in mid 70s, mid to upper 70s. So it would be not, and I think neutral winds. So it'd be favorable pitching conditions in Wrigley. It's indicative by, the 7.5 total, which obviously two good starting pitchers is going to bring that down as well. So what I'm getting at is if they get this game in, Sonny Gray, both pitchers here are extremely viable, and I have a ton of interest, but it comes with risk. If there's a delay, if there's a in-game delay, I mean, that's obviously going to bring a lot of risk into question here. And then obviously storms project to roll in later too. So this is just kind of one of those sit and wait. I really want to play Sonny Gray. He's one of my favorite options tonight. Even though he's kind of struggled of late too, I just think he's ran into a lot of bad luck. If you look at the metrics there, and it's going to turn around for him. So that's my lean. I would like to play Gray or either pitcher in here, but it's going to be one of those spots where we just have to watch and see how it plays out, how the weather plays out. So yeah, I don't have a lot of interest in the bats in this game. I respect both of these arms, and I think it's going to be pretty rough hitting conditions if those temperatures drop. So I'll be under on the bats here in this game.
Yeah, Gray hasn't been the best recently, but pitchers like Gray, Logan Webb yesterday, Charlie Morton, a couple bad outings for these veteran pitchers that have been around for years and years. As long as their stuff checks out and, they haven't lost velocity all of a sudden in the last couple starts, I generally don't worry too much about that and kind of just look at the matchup that they're facing on the given day. And I would certainly say that's all true of Sonny Gray. Over to you, Schlong, for Cubs and Cardinals. Obviously, weather pending here, but assuming it ends up looking okay for weather, what do you plan to do with this game?
So my thing on the weather here is I'm likely going to end up playing this game, and you kind of have to make a decision at lock because, if you're swapping off Imanaga and Gray at, 8 o'clock, because the game looks bad, who are you swapping to? You're swapping a Feltner and Fulmer. It's not really a fun swap. So if I play these guys, and right now I am, and I think I will, and I'll update you guys in Discord if I don't. I'm likely going to be doing it before lock as opposed to after lock. I don't think it's I think you just have to roll with the punches and hope the game plays at that point as opposed to swapping to some of these later pitchers. So just a note on late swap there. In terms of the actual matchups, I'm kind of hoping that it lowers their ownership just because I do want to play Gray. I do want to play Imanaga. I don't think that they're any worse than Morton and Lugo, who I think will go higher owned simply because of weather issues. So those are by far the 4 best pitchers on the slate. Those are kind of who I want to center my ownership around. Don't really want any bats here. It's a low total. With the storm approaching, temperatures will drop. I think AP made a really good point there. Like, I mean, if it was the weather right now in Chicago, even with good pitchers like on the hill, this would be higher than 7.5 total. But, the weather's going to be different at game time in a couple hours. So, I'm hoping they get this game in. To me, with the radar, it looks like they have enough time to get the game in. But, if you get the pop-up storms, that would kind of kill it. I would be worried if the game starts in a delay. If the game starts on time, I think it's, you just got to roll with it. Likely don't have tons of exposure to hitters here. Is not something that I'm like completely avoiding in my 150. If the game starts in delay, I would not be opposed to swapping hitters like to the guys in the next game that we'll talk about, but swapping pitchers to Feltner and Fulmer isn't exactly what I want to do on this slate. So, by 6:30, I'll probably have made my final decision here.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess maybe the only place I disagree with you guys is just on the Cardinals' power, that right-handed power. That'd be Contreras, Goldschmidt to some extent. Tommy Pham hits lefties really well. And Imanaga is a pitcher who attacks up in the zone with his four-seam fastball. I do think, he's been here for, half a season. I do think ultimately he's going to be a guy that gives up quite a few home runs in decent hitting conditions to right-handed power. And the Cardinals do have some of those guys who could do damage. Obviously, you get a little bit of leverage there, too. I don't really see any hitters on the Cubs that I'm dying to play in this one. So Cardinals bats, not a full stack, but, mini stacks or one-offs. Chasing home runs against Imanaga, I do think could be a decent way to go. Obviously, all of that just depends on what the game looks like at lock in terms of the weather with potential storms coming at Wrigley Field. Brings us to our last game of the slate, Colorado Rockies, Los Angeles Angels. We've got Ryan Feltner on the hill for the Rockies. He's been okay. Went away from Coors Field this year. I do think he is probably the best overall pitcher in that Rockies rotation. Again, a low bar to clear there. He hasn't been great. I don't think he's great, but I do think he is an decent major league arm, maybe a 4 or 5, but someone who can or maybe deserves to hold down a rotation spot. He is the cheapest pitcher on the board today as well at $6K, or actually, no, Montero's a little bit cheaper, but I can't use Montero. I guess Feltner, the cheapest pitcher I would personally be willing to use at $6K. Again, not excited about Feltner, but it is the Angels. They are worse, certainly, against right-handed pitching in general. And, if you're trying to get some of the big bats, if you're trying to get an Orioles stack or something like that, I do think Feltner is a reasonable play in this one. Angels will go with Carson Fulmer. He's kind of been around the league for the last 4 or 5 years. Not a very impressive arm. Has thrown weirdly exactly 77 pitches in each of his last 3 starts. So I think it's safe to project him around 77 pitches tonight. That seems fair to me. 7,300 is a kind of a steep price to pay, but he does get this Rockies team, which is, maybe the best matchup for right-handed pitchers of any team, especially when they're outside of Coors Field. Just, strikeout rates 25% plus up and down the lineup for the Rockies. So a bigger slate, I don't think I would consider Fulmer, and I don't know if I'll get there just playing a few teams tonight. But I don't think he's completely out of the question. Feltner, I do like him a little bit too. Just kind of depends on roster construction. But both of these guys, at least in consideration for me, and this is another game where you can certainly play either side of it. Not great offenses here, but they're mediocre pitchers at best. So you can certainly go to the Rockies or Angels. I did it with the Angels last night. Did not work out. They laid a dud against Kyle Freeland, even though they didn't strike out much. But we'll go back to you first again, AP. What are you doing with the Rockies and the Angels here?
Yeah, I mean, when I look at this, when you look at Feltner, he has been better. 5 or 6 straight starts of double-digit fantasy points logged. I mean, you see that, you see a $6K price tag. I think I would take that result and run on this slate as my SB2 option. Matchup-wise against the Angels, not a great team. He's probably my favorite SB2 pump. And I think I might run him in my main build. along with like one of the other arms that we talked about, Gray, Lugo, or Morton. And what that allows you to do is get some of these better stacks, Braves, Royals, and that's the path that I want to go. I mean, we've talked about it, a lot of volatility at pitching tonight. It's likely that's how it plays out. One way to maybe reduce that a little bit is to play one of these bad pitchers in a game that we know is going to be fine weather-wise. And why not pick on the Angels? I mean, they're a team that we've been picking on for a while now. So I am definitely fine punting with Feltner. Now, I've been playing the Rockies. They've been hitting the ball a lot better now, and so that's why I'm on Feltner over Fulmer. And I'm not going to be playing any Angels bats. I have mild interest in the Rockies here, but mainly it's punting with 6K Ryan Felter is how I'm going to approach this game.
Yeah, and I do think we'll see decent ownership on both of these pitchers. Sabres got Fulmer around 20%, Feltner around 15%. I'm actually kind of surprised. I would have thought that Feltner would be the higher end of the two, and maybe he will be, but that's what Sabre does have at the moment. Bryce, last game on the slate here. What do you see between the Rockies and the Angels?
I guess people just love picking on the Rockies,
yeah.
But I would probably prefer Feltner straight up in this game. I'm likely going to be under 20% on these guys. They have decent props. So, I kind of like when you guys were talking about the Chicago game and I was in my head like, oh, well, because, it just started storming at my house here in Indianapolis. So I'm not sure if that's the one going up to Chicago or not. But, like, if I do have to get off these guys and get on the pitchers, it's like, I think that might, like, drive their ownership up a bit, just with the people wanting the ability to weight swap, I guess. That might be thinking too deep into it. But, if they're going to come in that high in a 9 total, I want to be over on the offenses here. It's not like either of these guys are, like, amazing arms. It's just, kind of bad offenses and, middle of the road pitchers. LA has been a sneaky good spot for overs this season. I think that's why you see a 9 total here with 2 pretty bad offenses. You get Michael Stefanik at 2.4K for the Angels hitting second. I think he's going to come in, fairly chalky at second base. Anytime you just get like a super cheap guy at the top of the lineup with a good total, he'll be chalky. So just something to note there. I think the Rockies have a sneaky amount of power and upside between like Tovar and McMahon. Like him, Doyle, and McMahon, like those guys like can still get it done. I don't have like tons of faith in like Blackman too, but I think they make for like really interesting like 3-mans or even 5-mans. I don't normally say this. I do prefer the Rockies side of this game. I'm looking to be between around 10 and 15% on each pitcher. And, if I do have to panic swap off of Chicago, which I don't think I'm going to have to do, and I hope I don't have to do, that will obviously change. But, yeah, that's pretty much where I stand on my exposures here.
Yeah, it will be interesting if, people playing Gray and Imanaga, if ultimately the game looks like you need to swap off the pitchers. You'll see Feltner and Fulmer, their ownership is would essentially double, I would think, if Chicago, St. Louis looks bad.
If it looks bad, some people will get off, some people won't, and the people that get off will jack these guys up to like 30%.
And then a lot of those lineups too will end up leaving salary on the table, right? Because they're not going to want to.
They'll end up leaving salary, and like the optimizers, like you might even see some bats against it, just because like it's kind of hard to maneuver things sometimes. Like, I mean, I have to go in like manually and do stuff sometimes. It's not often that happens, but this is kind of a unique situation as to where like there's only one game after the rain. It's not like you have options.
Exactly, and St. Louis or Chicago starts 45 minutes after the Miami and Atlanta, so you're just kind of stuck with these 2 games on an island, and you could see some weird lineups out there. Again, I do think Cubs and St. Louis most likely will be fine, but I'm not sure everyone's seeing it that way, and we'll see kind of how ownership goes. It'll be you could eventually see some weird lineups near the top of tournaments if things break poorly weather-wise between the Cubs and the Cardinals. I think, if I'm playing Feltner or Fulmer, I'm more likely to play Feltner myself. I kind of want to have them in my lineup from the beginning and use my salary because I'm a little worried I'm going to be going up against, or it would be nice to go up against players who can't do that. Get some of the Gunners or Bobby Witts in your lineup. Maybe a lot of the field can't do that if they're forced to swap to these guys. And if you build like it's, build with these guys initially, you will have maybe a little bit different lineup. That'll do it for those 5 games, though. Let's get to stacks, pitching, home runs, and favorite hitters on the slate. We will start with you, AP, your favorite overall stack and your favorite contrarian stack.
Favorite overall is the Braves, and favorite contrarian. No one's gonna play the Tigers. I'm gonna say a little Tiger stack against Seth Lugo. I know I didn't really talk about it that much, but like these Royals pitchers on the road, they just have not been as good. I'm playing Lugo, not my main squad, but I'm definitely playing him on the slate. He's been so hit or miss. So and these games between these teams in the same division, I mean, they play out so many different ways. So give me a little Tiger stack against my Royals.
Yeah, I like that. And the contrarian stack on a 5-game slate, you're either, 1, not going contrarian with that answer, or 2, you're oftentimes picking a stack like the Tigers who you don't feel that great about, but it is just kind of the nature of the question. Bryce, over to you. Favorite stack, favorite contrarian stack?
I'm going to go with the Braves as well. I do prefer them to the Royals. My favorite contrarian stack will be the Rockies here. The 3 players I just mentioned make for a really solid 3-man off what seems to be a more popular than not, or he should be Fulmer.
All right. I'll go favorite stack. I'll go with the Royals. I didn't expect to get them past both of you, so certainly like them against Cater Montero. Specifically the top half of the lineup I like, but I did like that Massey call from AP. So I do like the Royals. And then I don't know how contrarian it'll be, but I like the Orioles tonight against Ben Lively, who I think is still pitching above his head. It's a really good park in Cleveland for left-handed power. And the Orioles have, I believe, 7 lefties, including their first 5 hitters in the lineup. Some salary relief as well at the bottom of the lineup with guys like Mullins, Holiday, and Ramon Urias. So I will go with the Orioles as my contrarian stack. Again, I do think some people are going to play them, but they're hard to get to, at least the top half with their big price tags. Kind of have to go down to a guy like Feltner to get there for the most part. AP, your most important pitcher tonight. Who do you think you'll be most over the field on?
I'm going to say Charlie Morton against this Marlins watered down, bad Marlins lineup. I'm going to have a lot of Charlie Morton tonight.
Schlong, your most important pitcher?
Likely Charlie Morton, depending on weather. But, if people get off the Chicago game, it could be, either of those guys. Likely because I'm likely playing them.
I'll go on the other side of that game. I kind of like Max Meyer rolling the dice there. He's going to be low owned. I think he's got upside. Could absolutely get blown up. I wouldn't be shocked at all. But I do think he's got a path to being the SP1 on this slate. Cheaper price tag, lower ownership, and trying to get first in a GPP. I'll roll the dice on some Max Meyer against the Braves tonight. AP home run call. Who's going yard?
I'm going to go back to Massey. I like that. Like that call. He should be extra motivated, hit sliders really well. Should get a bunch of looks tonight.
Bryce, home run call?
I'm going to go with new blood in the lineup, Jorge Soler.
All right. We got the leadoff hitter. I'll stick to the leadoff spot as well. I'll go back to the Orioles. Colton Cowser leading off for the Orioles tonight. Been swinging a pretty good bat. Recently rewarded with that leadoff spot. I think he can do some damage off of Ben Lively, hopefully before that Guardians bullpen gets into the game. Finally, your favorite overall hitter on the slate, AP?
Yeah, favorite overall bat on the slate has to be oh, man. It's a good question. Do I go with my Homer Royals or or
I mean,
not.
it has to be Bobby Witt.
I mean, yeah, but I also like I mean, we'll go Bobby Witt. Bobby Witt 6,500. Bobby Witt 6,500. I mean, just gives you so much. He's hitting the ball so well right now. Likely to get a stolen base or two. So yeah, Bobby Witt 6,500.
What did he hit, like 480 in the month of July? Just on fire, Bobby Witt. He's crazy good. Bryce, I think you maybe already answered it, but you got to give us a different answer.
I'll go with Jose Ramirez.
I like that call, and I'm going to the bottom of the Orioles lineup. Jackson Holiday going to get it done for us. 3K flat out of the 2-hole for the Orioles. And yeah, that'll do it for this show. Appreciate all you guys tuning in today. If you do want to join us at Run Pure Sports, you can use promo code RPS15. That'll get you 15% off weekly, monthly, full package. We got, of course, NFL coming up, Olympics, baseball, everything else you need over at runpuresports.com. Use promo code RPS15. The show will be back same time, same place tomorrow. Big Friday slate. We'll have the 3-man booth, me, Boyden, and Stats, breaking it all down for you guys on a better slate than we've had today or yesterday. So looking forward to that. Good luck to everybody. Hope we'll see some RPS logos up top. For Bryce, for AP, I'm Draft Cheat, and we are out of here.